Across forests, old orchards, and deserted fields, there are trees that do not merely grow. They twist against the sky like hands reaching for the living. Roots claw at the earth as if holding onto something buried beneath. Bark bears marks of the past, deep scars that never healed. These trees are different. They are witnesses. They have seen death, despair, and the final moments of those who could not escape their own fate. And some say that in certain forests, the bodies never left. Locals whisper about these trees. About shadows that move along their branches. About shadows that move along their branches. About figures that swing slowly even on windless nights. About footsteps circling the trunk. About whispers in the leaves, naming people who dare to walk too close. A few never return, vanishing into the woods as if the roots themselves took them. Some visitors report feeling fingers brush their shoulders. Some hear groans carried through the forest, like someone pulling against rope or branch. If you stood before a tree that had witnessed life end in its branches, and you saw something dangling silently from above, would you step closer to see it, or would you retreat before the forest claimed your curiosity? Take a deep breath. Let the wind guide you. We are walking into the haunted woods. Hello, my dear friend. I hope you are somewhere safe tonight. The places we are visiting are not gentle forests with sunlight and birds. They are shadows. They are whispers. They are memories of those who never left. Across the world, certain trees became grim markers of human tragedy. Some were cottonwoods, bending over rivers. Some were cypresses, standing tall in silent cemeteries. Their branches carried stories of sorrow and death. People who wander near these trees report strange experiences. The air grows heavy. Shadows move where nothing should be. Branches seem to bend toward the living. Rope marks remain visible long after decades have passed. Visitors hear groans, sometimes faint, sometimes unbearable, carried through the rustling leaves. Some have even seen fleeting figures at the edge of their vision, standing by the trunk, waiting. These trees are not empty. They do not forgive. They do not forget. Before we step closer into the shadows, I want to ask you something. If you saw a figure hanging silently from a tree, its face turned toward you, would you walk closer to Loka? Or would you turn and run before it blinked? Hold your breath, my friend. The woods remember every step. Widow's Oak rises at the edge of a quiet creek in Virginia, its massive trunk stretching skyward, branches twisting like arms reaching for the clouds. The tree's bark is rough, scarred with age and weather, and its roots grip the earth like hands holding on to memory. The creek flows silently past, reflecting the gray sky in ripples that vanish as quickly as they appear. The air is still, heavy with the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. Rope marks stretch deep into its trunk. Faint but unmistakable, they trace vertical lines into the wood, worn smooth in places by time and touch. Some marks curve slightly, following the natural twists of the oak. Locals say a woman once ended her life here, leaving behind her sorrow, a grief that became part of the tree itself. The story is told quietly, almost reverently, as if speaking too loudly would disturb the presence that remains. The ground beneath the oak is worn, soil packed from generations of footsteps. Grass struggles to grow near the base, leaving patches of bare earth. Fallen leaves cling to the roots. And small animals avoid the area closest to the trunk. The place feels paused, as though the world around it is aware that something lingers in the shadow of the tree. On foggy nights, the rope swings slowly, though no one touches it. It moves with deliberate rhythm, a gentle sway that matches the rhythm of the creek beneath. The rope never falls still. It does not fray or weather further than expected. Those who watch it feel a strange patience in the motion. As if the tree itself maintains the swing in remembrance. Visitors feel a cold breeze brush across their necks as if the tree itself exhales. It is not wind from the creek or the surrounding woods. It is a localized chill that rises from the base of the trunk, brushing skin and hair with sudden awareness. The air carries the faint scent of old bark and damp rope, mingling with a subtle trace of the creek's water. It is not unpleasant, but it is undeniable, a reminder that the tree is more than wood and leaves. Branches stretch over the creek, some dipping low as though to touch the water. The fog gathers in these limbs, curling around them like smoke. Light refracts through the mist, creating the illusion of movement, figures half-formed in the gray haze. The air feels dense here, pressing lightly against visitors' shoulders and backs. Every step closer to the tree seems to bring the presence more sharply into focus, though nothing visible moves except the rope. Footsteps along the creek's edge are muffled by moss and fallen leaves, yet the sound echoes unnaturally. Visitors report hearing soft crunches behind them, though no one approaches. Shadows shift in the periphery of vision, moving in tandem with the sway of the rope. Disappearing when directly looked at. The combination of fog, sound, and subtle motion gives the impression that the tree watches, that it waits for recognition. The oak's branches are thick, knotty, and full of hollows. Small birds and squirrels occupy some cavities, but they do not venture near the trunk where the rope hangs. The hollows hold shadow and memory, dark spaces that seem deeper than their size would suggest. At night, the hollows catch the faint glow of moonlight or a flashlight, reflecting in angles that appear to shift, creating the illusion of more than one presence in the tree. Visitors who linger beneath Widowa's oak report a sense of gravity in the space. The rope swings slightly faster when someone stands still for too long. The cold rises, brushing against the neck, shoulders, and hands. The creek's water seems to slow, losing its normal flow, until it becomes a mirror of the sky and tree. The branches seem to stretch further, the rope's movement more deliberate. The ground beneath the oak shows traces of past visitors. Footprints, often partial, appear and fade into the soil. Some are old, compacted and worn. Others appear fresh, only to vanish by morning. Shadows of people, distorted by the low light, appear along the creek and among the roots. The tree exudes stillness, yet it is alive with subtle motion. Leaves rustle though no wind moves through them. Small branches tilt slightly as if responding to sound or presence. The rope swings. Fog drifts through the limbs. The creek reflects more than water. The cold moves like breath. The oak seems aware of every approach, every hesitation, every glance. Widow's oak is not violent. It does not demand. It simply waits. For those who come near, it offers the subtle presence of memory, of sorrow transformed into wood and rope, of grief made tangible. The creek flows, the fog drifts, the rope swings. A cold breath rises along the trunk and across the skin of any who stand beneath it. For those who come near, it offers the subtle presence of memory, of sorrow transformed into wood and rope, of grief made tangible. This massive oak stands at the edge of a creek. Rope marks stretch deep into its trunk. Locals say a woman once ended her life here, leaving behind her sorrow. On foggy nights, the rope swings slowly, though no one touches it. Visitors feel a cold breeze brush across their necks as if the tree itself exhales. And the oak waits, patient, silent, eternal. Black branch elm rises from the ground of the main forest like a sentinel shaped by time and wind. Its trunk twists unnaturally, gnarled by decades of storms, frost, and relentless growth. Limbs stretch outward in contorted angles, reaching toward the sky and earth alike, like long fingers searching for something unseen. The bark is dark and rough, cracked with age, and knots form shapes that seem almost deliberate, as though the tree itself watches the forest around it. The forest surrounding the elm is dense. Pine, maple, and birch cluster tightly, their shadows stretching long across the undergrowth. Light filters in through the canopy in muted shafts, illuminating patches of moss and fallen leaves. The air feels cooler near the tree, heavier, as though the elm exerts its own gravity on the environment. Hikers passing through the area often remark that the woods seem darker here, colder, alive in a way that goes beyond mere wind or wildlife. Whispers can be heard from the canopy. Names spoken softly, carried on the breeze, as if the wind itself speaks in a language older than the forest. Some hikers swear that if you pause and listen, you can discern a rhythm to the whispers, a cadence that mimics human speech, yet remains just beyond comprehension. The voices do not shout. They do not demand. They call. Patient, repetitive, echoing off the twisted branches in a pattern that seems deliberate. The sound is faint, carried lightly through the leaves, but it presses against the mind of anyone who stops to hear. A rope hangs from one of the larger limbs, frayed and weathered. It swings gently even when there is no wind. The sound resonates through the surrounding air, faint but unmistakable. Yet the sensation is unmistakable. Something passed this way recently, or perhaps is passing still, unseen to the eye. The ground beneath the elm is littered with leaves, needles, and fragments of bark. Some portions are worn, as though hikers pass frequently. Others remain pristine, untouched by human or animal presence, as if the soil itself avoids the tree. The forest floor seems to shift subtly here. Shadows lengthen beyond the light's natural angles. Sounds arrive slightly out of order. The rustle of leaves sometimes comes from behind before it comes from ahead, confusing perception. The environment bends around the tree, just enough to unsettle those who pause too long. Visitors report a sense of being watched. Not by animals. Not by other humans. The sensation is persistent, subtle, insistent. It grows when the wind rises, when branches sway, when sunlight falls in particular patterns across the trunk. Even when alone, hikers feel pressure in the air, a weight pressing against the back of the neck, a presence lingering just beyond vision. The effect is cumulative. The longer one stays, the more pronounced the sensation becomes. Some claim they have glimpsed figures moving through the canopy. They are rarely clear, only shapes, like shadows that shift independently of the branches. The rope above creaks in response, though no wind blows and no footsteps are visible. Some believe the tree itself guides these movements, a guardian of sorts, orchestrating the forest around it to maintain its presence. The air is heavy with the scent of moss and decaying wood, earthy and persistent. It clings to clothes and skin, lingering after hikers leave the clearing. Birds rarely perch in the immediate vicinity. Insects are quiet. Even squirrels and small mammals seem to avoid the area, keeping to the edges of the woods rather than approaching the elm. The space around the tree is not barren, but it is controlled, ordered, as if something dictates which creatures may pass. Those who linger hear distant creaks and groans through the limbs. Sounds that might be branches rubbing together in the wind, but the pattern is irregular, deliberate. Sometimes it is rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat resonating through the trunk. Those who look often see nothing. Yet the sound continues, insistent and precise. Travelers often feel the pull of the tree even after leaving. Names continue to echo in the mind long after the forest fades from view. The feeling of weight in the air, the pressure on the shoulders, the awareness of being observed all persist for minutes, sometimes hours. The memory of the tree remains vivid. Even roads and paths taken afterward seem to fold back in imagination toward the twisted elm, returning hikers to the clearing in thought if not in step. Black Branch Elm is a singular presence in the Maine woods. Its limbs twist like fingers. Whispers rise from the canopy, calling names into the wind. The rope creaks as though weight passes unseen. The forest grows darker, colder, alive in its orbit. Those who visit cannot shake the sense of being observed, of being counted, of being remembered by a presence that does not sleep. The tree holds the clearing, and the clearing holds the tree, suspended together in a quiet, enduring vigilance. The elm waits, patient and eternal, its fingers stretching into sky and soil alike, watching. Hanging pine stands in a remote grove deep in the Oregon forest, the oldest tree among a cluster of towering evergreens. Its trunk is thick and gnarled, bark cracked with age and streaked with moss. Limbs stretch high into the sky, some twisting down toward the earth like the arms of a giant frozen mid-motion. The grove around it is overgrown, with ferns and fallen branches crowding the narrow path that leads to the tree. Locals avoid the area, saying the path itself carries a warning. At night, shadowy figures appear at the base of hanging pine. They are indistinct, darker than the darkness of the forest. They do not move like people or animals. They linger, silent and patient, as though watching the path and the travelers who dare to approach. Some step too close and feel the air shift around them, the temperature dropping in sudden waves. Others hear sounds that should not exist in the stillness of the forest. Breathing comes from above. A deep, steady exhale, drawn from the heights of the tree. It is not wind. It is not the sigh of forest life. It is deliberate, a presence that moves with the rustle of pine needles and the sway of branches. Some hear it in pulses, like someone drawing breath slowly, carefully, measuring the steps below. Others describe it as uneven, irregular, forcing the ears to strain to understand its origin. Chains clink. Ropes scrape. The sounds are faint at first, almost imperceptible over the natural hum of the forest at night. Then they grow, echoing through the grove as if something swings just beyond sight. The branches of hanging pine move, though no wind stirs. Shadows shift with the movement, stretching across the ground in patterns that do not match the shape of the limbs above. Travelers have reported looking up to see ropes dangling, swinging slowly, though nothing is tied to them. The motion is continuous, hypnotic, as though the tree itself were performing some unseen ritual. Few have lingered long enough to see what swings in the wind. Those who do speak of shapes that appear in the darkness. Forms too tall to be human. Limbs that move against gravity, twisting downward from the upper branches. Objects that resemble people, suspended by invisible hands. The tree seems to lean toward them as though offering a closer view. The shadows below respond in kind, gathering near the base, waiting. Silence stretches between the sounds of breath, chains, and movement. It is not a calm silence. It presses in, heavy and patient. Fewer have returned. Those who leave report the experience in hushed tones, speaking only to trusted friends. They describe the sensation of being followed, not by footsteps, but by perception itself. The grove seems to remember their presence, holding it even as they move away. Travelers who linger too long vanish, or they come back changed, speaking less, walking slower, always looking upward. Some refuse to return to town, instead camping in distant parts of the forest, unable to let go of the memory. The path to Hanging Pine is narrow, lined with trees that lean inward, forming a natural tunnel. Shadows pool under low branches, seeming to move independently. Leaves crunch beneath steps, though some visitors swear they did not touch the ground. The forest floor is uneven, roots exposed and twisted, creating obstacles that are more than natural. Travelers who stumble sometimes swear that unseen hands guide them upright, or push them back, steering their path through the grove. The tree itself dominates the clearing. Its limbs spread wide, some curling downward in loops that could be grasped, though no one has done so and lived to describe it. The bark is rough against the hand, blackened in places as though scorched. Branches creak and groan with no wind, responding to the presence of anyone beneath. At night, the forest hums differently. Crickets fall silent. The rustle of leaves slows. Animals retreat to denser woods. All sounds seem drawn toward hanging pine. Shadows thicken. The breathing grows deeper, more deliberate. Chains echo. Ropes scrape. The air vibrates with the movement of things that are not there. Locals have learned to avoid the path entirely. They do not speak of it to outsiders. They mark directions differently, bypassing the grove entirely. Those who live nearby report hearing sounds even from a distance. The swing of ropes, the breath of the tree, the soft shuffle of movement at the base. Some say it is the oldest presence in the forest, older than the town, older than the first settlers. Others claim it is the work of restless spirits bound to the tree, unable to leave, unable to rest. Hanging pine remains as it has for centuries. The oldest tree in a forgotten grove. Breathing rises from above. Chains clink and ropes scrape in the wind. Few have lingered to witness the movement. Fewer have returned to tell the tale. Travelers step onto the path at their own risk. Locals warn and turn away. The forest waits patiently. And the tree swings in the dark, silent but ever present, holding the grove in its ancient grip. Echo willow rises along the banks of a slow river in Tennessee, its branches long and low, dipping toward the water like fingers brushing the surface. The trunk is thick and weathered, scarred by old ropes that wrap around it in patterns too precise to be natural. Sunlight filters through the leaves in fragmented beams, illuminating the scars with a pale glow. Moss clings to the roots, trailing into the water where it floats in slow, twisting strands. The air carries the smell of wet earth, of decaying leaves, and of something older that refuses to settle. Visitors often arrive quietly, sensing the weight of stillness around the tree. The river moves with a gentle current, but the air above it holds tension. A pulse that is easy to miss until the branches shift slightly. A breeze moves through the hanging leaves, but the sound is subtle, almost swallowed by the dense quiet. It is in this quiet that people hear the first traces of something unusual. Faint crying drifts across the water, delicate and tentative, as if carried from far downstream. It appears and vanishes in waves, leaving only the echo of its presence. Leaving only the echo of its presence. Echo of its presence. Of its presence. Its presence. Vanishes in waves, leaving only the echo of its presence. Shadows gather among the branches. They do not move like people or animals. They hang, lean, shift imperceptibly. Some seem to mirror the shape of a person. Others stretch long across the ground and water, twisting and curving as if trying to follow something invisible. Visitors report that the shadows appear only when the crying is present, sometimes lingering long after the sound fades, as though listening or waiting. The shapes never approach directly, but always remain near the edges of sight, fleeting and uncatchable. Whispers follow some visitors. They are soft, fragmented, in voices not their own. Names are repeated, called faintly and slowly, carrying across the space between water and tree. The names do not always belong to anyone present. Occasionally, a visitor hears their own name spoken, the intonation unfamiliar, layered with subtle tones that suggest sorrow or warning. The whispers seem to come from the water, from the air, from the trunk itself. The direction is never clear. Some who stop to listen feel a chill that rises along the spine, a pressure that is both tangible and fleeting. The river reflects the tree and sky in fractured light, ripples moving without wind. On calm days, the surface appears mirror-like, but disturbances arise as if something passes beneath the water. Small movements, barely visible, break the reflection into patterns that ripple outward. There are no fish that create such precise movements. No wind that carries them. Observers describe the sensation of being watched from below, as though the river itself holds consciousness, noting their presence, following each gesture and step. Footpaths leading to the tree are narrow and overgrown. The grass bends unevenly, pressed flat in certain areas as though repeatedly walked by weight too light to see or too quick to follow. Moss-covered stones and fallen branches create natural obstacles, but the path seems guided, directing visitors toward the tree without overt signs. Even seasoned hikers report an unusual sensation of being drawn forward, a subtle pull toward the hanging branches and the water beneath them. The rope scars tell their own story. Knots and frays wrap the trunk in patterns, etched deep into the wood, weathered but preserved. Some scars are high, far above the reach of any adult. Others are low, twisted around the base where roots meet soil. Visitors speculate about their origin, some believing them to be old tree swings, others imagining far darker explanations. Regardless, the marks add to the weight in the air, a history that presses quietly against anyone who lingers. Nightfall transforms Echo Willow entirely. The crying grows more pronounced, sharper in tone, rising in rhythm with the swaying of the branches. Shadows stretch further and twist more clearly, occasionally forming shapes that appear to step onto the river's surface. The whispers return in waves, names repeating faster, overlapping, layered, almost chanting. The air feels heavy with memory, anticipation, and the weight of stories untold. Some visitors report that as they approach the water, the reflections shift. Faces appear briefly among the ripples, pale and fleeting, before vanishing when attention turns fully toward them. Shapes rise in the mirrored surface, arms or figures emerging and retreating. The water remains shallow, but the perception suggests depth and distance beyond the natural, impossible to explain. Silence follows each appearance, leaving only the low murmur of leaves and distant river sounds. Until the crying and whispers begin again. Echo Willow holds a sense of deliberate presence. Every movement in the branches, every ripple in the water, every whisper in the air feels attentive. The tree is both sentinel and stage. The river a mirror of memory. And the shadows carriers of story. Visitors leave with impressions that cling. The sound of crying, the rhythm of footsteps that were never theirs, the repeated names. The feeling that someone or something has marked them as present. The forest beyond seems quieter after leaving, still. As if respecting the boundary of the tree's domain. Willow branches dip low over the river. Rope scars line the trunk. Faint crying drifts across the water. Shadows gather among the hanging branches. Whispers speak names not your own. Echo Willow endures, quietly attentive. A place where memory, presence, and observation intertwine. Carrying every visitor's attention with it into the stillness of the night. Crooked cypress stands alone in a low, swampy clearing in Louisiana, a tree that twists toward the sky in impossible angles. Its trunk is warped and gnarled, split and hollowed at the base, blackened by time and moisture. Moss hangs from the branches like tattered curtains, moving gently even when the air is still. The ground around it is spongy and dark, water pooled in shallow depressions, reflecting the gray sky above. The tree dominates the landscape, an impossible presence in the flat expanse of cypress swamp, its shape unsettling and unnatural. A single rope dangles from a high branch. Its end swings just above the waterlogged earth, never resting. On calm days, it moves slightly in rhythm with the wind, but when storms arrive, the rope thrashes violently, slicing through the rain and wind as if someone above grips it and pulls. When storms arrive, the rope thrashes violently, slicing through the rain and wind as if someone above grips it and pulls. Travelers who approach the tree during storms report that the rope swings with more force than wind alone could produce. It moves deliberately, sometimes toward them, sometimes away, as though aware of each step they take. Some say it tightens when you come close, pulling as if testing their proximity, teasing them, daring them to touch it. The hollowed trunk seems alive. Shadows shift within it, and a faint groaning emerges from the depths of its interior. The sound is low and resonant, like timber under immense weight, but also like breath struggling to escape. Approaching the hollow, the noise seems to respond to movement, growing louder when someone leans close and fading when they retreat. Some visitors swear that if you stand too long, the groaning changes into faint whispers, indecipherable but urgent, a call from inside the tree that cannot be ignored. Around the base, roots twist above the mud like fingers gripping for purchase. Moss and lichen coat the knots and ridges. And small creatures scuttle in the wet detritus. Disturbed by footsteps. The air is thick and humid, carrying the smell of damp wood, rotting leaves, and stagnant water. The tree seems to dominate every sense. A presence that is difficult to ignore. Even the wind seems to bend around it, shifting unpredictably, carrying with it the subtle groan of the hollow and the swish of the rope. Stories about crooked cypress have circulated among locals for generations. Some say the tree marks the spot where misfortune fell centuries ago. And the hollow is a remnant of old rituals that left the tree cursed. Others insist it is a natural anomaly, a tree twisted by swamp water and wind. Yet the rope and the sound give pause. Visitors report seeing shadows above in the branches where no light penetrates. Shapes that seem to move with intention. No one has confirmed what or who could inhabit such heights. Yet the presence feels tangible. Some say the tree is a portal to other dimensions. The swamp surrounding the tree intensifies the experience. Fog creeps across the water in morning and evening, curling around roots and branches, turning the landscape into a labyrinth of muted light and shadow. The rope sometimes cuts a perfect arc across the haze, a phantom limb in motion. Observers notice it occasionally brushing against branches or swinging closer to the hollow. There is no wind to account for these movements. And yet the rope swings. Those who venture beneath the canopy often feel watched. Movement in the periphery seems too deliberate for wildlife. Sounds carry unnaturally through the swamp. Steps in the mud echo loudly, as though the tree itself amplifies them. Small branches snap and sway, though no wind passes. The hollow sometimes emits a deeper groan, as if reacting to human presence. Some describe a faint pressure against their bodies, a sensation of being measured, tested. Others swear that if you look up at the rope for too long, it moves toward you, even when you step back. Attempts to interact with the tree are discouraged by the swamp. Roots are slick, mud unstable. The waterlogged earth grips boots and slows movement. But even those who stand at the edge of the clearing feel the weight of attention from the tree, the rope, and the hollow. The groaning begins quietly, then grows, a chorus that seems to ripple through the air, bouncing off every surface, vibrating through the bones. It is neither threatening nor welcoming, merely aware. Patient. Observant. Local lore warns that the rope is not merely old and forgotten. During violent storms, some claim the rope swings toward intruders as if to grasp them, and the hollow emits sharper, higher-pitched groans. Others report hearing creaking and low thuds from within the trunk, as though something moves inside, pacing. No one has ever been harmed, yet the stories persist. Some who approach too closely return shaken, silent for days. Others do not return at all. Those who stay across the swamp's edge swear that they hear the sound of the rope slicing through the air and the hollow sighing in response. The tree's presence dominates the swamp entirely. The ground, water, and fog all seem to orbit around it. Wind bends in unpredictable ways. Wildlife is cautious, moving only at the far edges. Mist and shadow gather near the base and within the hollow, emphasizing the tree's twisted form. For visitors, it is not only the rope or the groaning that unnerves them. It is the sense that the tree exists with purpose, that it has witnessed decades or centuries of quiet observation, waiting for attention to approach. Twisted and warped, the cypress has a hollow trunk. A single rope remains dangling from a high branch. During storms, it swings violently as if pushed by unseen hands. Some swear the rope tightens as you approach. Others hear soft groaning from inside the hollow. The crooked cypress waits. Always watching. Always aware. Always patient. Silent oak stands along a forgotten stretch of road in Georgia, its massive trunk rising from the earth like a sentinel watching over the land. The roots stretch deep and wide, gripping the soil tightly, while the thick canopy of branches twists overhead, filtering sunlight into slivers that dance across the ground. The air is heavy here, carrying a quiet stillness that seems almost alive, a weight that presses lightly on anyone who comes near. Travelers hear footsteps circling the trunk at night. The sound is slow and deliberate, following a rhythm that suggests intent. Sometimes it begins faintly, distant, only to grow louder as if approaching. Other times it appears right beneath the visitor's feet, then drifts along the roots in a slow, endless loop. There is no shape visible, no shadow cast along the ground, yet the sound persists, surrounding the oak like a presence that cannot be ignored. Some claim to see a figure in black standing silently beside the rope that hangs from a low branch. The figure is motionless, solid enough to occupy space, yet it blends into the shadows, shifting with the fog that often gathers near the tree. When approached, the figure does not move, does not speak, and remains watching. If you blink, it vanishes, leaving nothing but the swaying rope and the whispers of leaves in its place. The rope itself swings lightly in the windless night, never still, never fast, never fraying. The sound of the rope brushing against the bark is faint, yet distinct in the stillness, blending with the soft crunch of leaves and the distant hum of insects. The air smells faintly of ash and earth. Not smoke from recent fire, but the lingering trace of something burned long ago, mingled with the scent of soil and fallen leaves. Every inhale carries the sensation of walking through a space marked by past events, a place where the wind itself seems to carry whispers along the roots and branches. Around the oak, the ground is worn and uneven. The ground is worn and uneven. The grass thins near the trunk, revealing soil packed smooth by years of footsteps. Fallen branches lie scattered, some resting in shadowed patterns that suggest deliberate placement. Leaves are layered thick, muffling sound, yet stirring lightly when touched by the figure's invisible steps. The canopy above blocks the sky in patches, creating an interplay of shadow and moonlight. On clear nights, the light falls across the rope and the trunk in sharp angles, highlighting the textures of bark and knots, in ways that make the tree seem alive. The shadows twist subtly, and shapes appear to linger in the corner of vision, vanishing when focused upon. Visitors report that the footsteps respond to their own movement. They follow when approached, pause when stopped, move faster when hesitation occurs. The rhythm is not random. It mirrors attention, patience, and awareness. Standing too long in one spot intensifies the sensation, a pressure that grows along the shoulders and back, as if the tree itself observes and measures each heartbeat. The figure in black never speaks. It does not gesture. Yet it communicates through presence, through the way the rope swings and the way the footsteps loop. There is a stillness about it that fills the night, a quiet command that draws attention to the tree and the surrounding shadows. Some visitors swear they feel warmth near the figure, a subtle shift in temperature that contrasts with the cool air of the night. The oak seems to breathe in sync with the movements around it. Leaves flutter gently, though no wind moves them. The rope rises and falls. Shadows stretch and shrink along the roots. Footsteps circle, silent but audible in the quiet of the night. Every element is in subtle motion, a choreography of presence and memory. Even in daylight, silent oak carries a weight. Sunlight reveals the texture of the bark, the depth of the roots, the pattern of the rope swinging from the branch. The ground remains worn, leaves layered thick. The air feels denser here, heavier than the open fields beyond. Though footsteps and figures are absent in the day, the space maintains a quiet vigilance, as if aware of those who will return when darkness falls. The creek nearby moves slowly, reflecting the tree in still water. Shadows of branches ripple along its surface, distorted but recognizable. The sound of moving water blends with distant whine through other trees, creating a continuous, low hum that fills the space between the roots and branches. Silent oak does not demand attention, nor does it threaten. It waits. It observes. The footsteps circle, the rope sways, the air smells faintly of ash and earth. The figure in black stands beside the rope, motionless, yet fully present. Blink, and it vanishes. A massive oak near an old road. Travelers hear footsteps circling the trunk at night. Some claim to see a figure in black standing silently beside the rope. If you blink, it vanishes. The air smells faintly of ash and earth. Silent oak waits patiently, carrying memory, presence, and quiet vigilance for anyone who comes to notice the unseen in the shadow of its trunk. Devil's elm rises alone in the North Carolina woods, a towering tree twisted by time and storm. Its branches curl and bend in unnatural angles, reaching outward as though aware of every step taken beneath them. Even in daylight, the tree casts shadows that seem to move independently, stretching long and dark across the forest floor. The bark is rough, mottled with age and decay, yet the tree stands solid, defiant, almost purposeful in its stance. Those who approach cannot help but feel the branches are shaping themselves toward trespassers, guiding attention, controlling movement without a sound. The clearing around the elm is sparse. Fallen leaves and pine needles carpet the ground. But the soil beneath is compacted, worn by years of visitors drawn to the tree. A rope hangs from one of the largest limbs, frayed and blackened with age. It sways lightly even in calm air, an unnatural movement that seems deliberate. The rope is thick, sturdy, and heavy, yet it moves without anyone touching it. Shadows gather in its vicinity, thickening as dusk falls. The air feels colder here, heavier, as though the forest itself presses inward toward the clearing. At night, the rope becomes more than an object. A shadow hangs from it, faint at first, indistinct against the black sky. Those who step closer report the figure swings slightly, almost alive. The movement is subtle, deliberate, like it responds to the presence of those below. No sound accompanies it, yet its motion is unmistakable. The shadow does not fall naturally. It does not flutter with the wind. It maintains a tension, an awareness, that makes every approach feel like trespassing into someone else's domain. Visitors often feel a cold hand press against their back when they near the tree. Not a brush of wind. Not a branch shifting. A deliberate, solid pressure, just enough to startle, never injure. Lingers for seconds before vanishing, leaving only the chilling impression of presence. Those who experience it describe a weight in the air, a sense of being watched from multiple angles, even when the clearing seems empty. The sensation grows as the shadow swings, as if the tree itself orchestrates every movement around it. The forest surrounding Devil's Elm seems alive in subtle ways. Leaves rustle when no wind passes. Branches shift slightly in rhythm with a distant pulse. Sounds arrive from unexpected directions, whispers of movement that do not match the visual cues of the forest. Animals avoid the clearing entirely, even those accustomed to human presence. Birds will circle high above but never land. Squirrels and small mammals keep to the edges of the woods, staying silent. The clearing appears natural, yet it exerts influence, directing attention and controlling perception without effort. The rope sways more vigorously in response to motion. Footsteps near the tree, sudden sounds, or even prolonged observation can provoke stronger movement. Witnesses report that the shadow's swing accelerates subtly, timing its motion with their approach. It does not leave the rope. It does not descend. It waits, observing, testing boundaries. The sensation of hands or presence against the back grows more pronounced at these moments, the chill spreading deeper into the skin. It is not malevolent in sound, but its effect is undeniably a heightened alertness, the racing heartbeat, the feeling that every movement is tracked. The clearing itself is strangely quiet. Other than the occasional movement of the rope and the whisper of branches. The forest does not intrude. The usual sounds of nocturnal wildlife are absent. Replaced by a heavy stillness. Footsteps on the soil sound amplified. Yet echo oddly, stretching longer than distance should allow. Shadows along the ground seem to shift independently. Falling where no source exists. Visitors describe seeing shapes at the edges of vision. Fleeting, indistinct, disappearing when attention is turned toward them. Some explorers try to photograph the elm at night. Camera flashes capture nothing beyond the natural contours of the tree, yet film and digital images often reveal faint shadows or blurs not visible to the naked eye. A branch may appear thicker, a rope seem taut, a shadow hanging in midair where none was present moments before. Some report subtle distortions along the edges of frames, as if the camera captures aspects of the clearing invisible to human perception. The rope, shadow, and tree together form a presence that persists without fail. The hand on the back, the sway of the rope, the twisting limbs that seem aware. They combine to create a perception that is constant, patient, and unyielding. The tree is a sentinel. The rope is a marker. The clearing is a boundary. Each visitor entering is measured, observed, and recorded in ways unseen. Those who remain too long report the sensation of being guided, the invisible weight nudging them toward leaving. A subtle insistence that the clearing does not tolerate lingering. The clearing does not tolerate lingering. Even as sunlight returns, the feeling lingers. The branches remain contorted, the rope rests in its position. And the forest keeps its silence. Shadows lengthen in ways that seem deliberate. Every limb and knot appears alive, responsive. Those who step into the clearing sense an awareness that remains long after they leave. As though the tree has memorized each movement and stored it in the angles of its branches. Devil's Elm is not merely a tree. It is a presence, a guardian of its clearing, a sentinel that observes all who enter. Branches twist unnaturally, guiding attention. At night, a shadow hangs from the rope, swinging subtly in observation. Hands press against the back of intruders. The forest grows darker, colder, alive. The tree watches. Always. And those who approach cannot shake the sense that they are never truly alone. Bloodwood pine stands on a steep ridge in Northern California, isolated among scrub and scattered evergreens. The tree is massive, older than most of the surrounding forest, its trunk thick and knotted, bark dark and almost red, as if soaked in something more than sunlight. Locals avoid the path that leads to it, claiming that even the approach carries a weight, a pull on the senses that is hard to ignore. At sunset, the forest around Bloodwood pine grows unnaturally quiet. Birds fall silent. Wind softens to a near halt. The orange glow of fading sunlight casts long shadows. The tree itself seems to absorb light, its red bark glowing in a way that feels alive. From the edges of the ridge, travelers report hearing something carried on the breeze. Screams. Not clear or human, but piercing, echoing down the slope and rolling across the forest like a wave. The sound is sharp, then fading, like a memory of pain echoing through time. Those who linger near the tree often feel it first in the body. A weight pressing downward, heavier than gravity alone. The air grows thick, hard to inhale. The ground beneath seems to pull slightly, as though rooted in a force beyond wood and soil. Travelers describe dizziness, nausea, a weakness that spreads through limbs like water draining from a vessel. Some feel their heart beat slow, then skip, then return to rhythm only after retreating a few steps. The rope marks on the trunk tell a story of repeated motion, of bindings and suspensions. Locals speak of it in whispers, warning that the scars are not only physical. The bark appears darker where the grooves are deepest, as though the tree has absorbed the trauma and held it in place for decades. Small animals avoid the vicinity. Birds do not perch on the branches. Even the wind seems to bend around the base of the tree, brushing past without touching the scarred surface. Visitors report hearing more than screams. Low groans seem to rise from the roots, vibrations felt through the feet. Leaves shift without wind, brushing against each other in soft, deliberate movements. Shadows gather under the branches, stretching longer than the angle of the sun should allow, moving imperceptibly when no one is watching. At times, those standing near the tree feel a presence behind them, though when they turn, nothing is visible. A cold pressure settles against the back, fleeting but unmistakable, as though the tree has reached out. The ridge is steep, yet those who approach the tree often report losing awareness of time and distance. The path seems longer on the return than on the way in. Colors become muted. Sounds distant and hollow. Some describe a low humming, resonant with the red bark, felt more than heard. It carries with it an impression of movement, of life under the surface, and a warning that proximity is measured by endurance. Sunset is the peak of the experience. The red of the bark deepens, almost glowing. The screams carried by the wind increase in intensity, sometimes sounding urgent, sometimes distant, like whispers from the past. The air thickens. Visitors often feel their energy pulled, as though the tree collects strength from those who stand too close, storing it in the fibers of its trunk and limbs. Locals claim that few who remain after sunset without moving quickly ever leave unchanged. Some return pale, exhausted, their balance unsteady for hours. Others report nightmares of the tree at night, of its branches swinging in impossible directions. Of rope marks extending along their arms as if tattooed by memory. A few speak of hearing voices alongside the screams, calling names that they do not recognize but feel compelled to answer. The forest around bloodwood pine grows denser toward the ridge. And the approach itself tests travelers. Roots rise above the soil like ridges, tripping the unaware. Fallen branches and loose rocks hide in shadows. The wind shifts, sometimes blowing gently, sometimes stilling entirely, making the forest seem too quiet. The tree dominates the clearing, standing above the smaller evergreens. Its presence undeniable and oppressive. Despite the warnings, some are drawn to it. They step close, touch the scarred trunk, and feel the hum of energy passing through the bark into their hands. Some report an almost magnetic pull, a sensation that insists they linger. The air around their faces thickens, their vision narrows, and the screams carry with more clarity, more insistence. The tree seems to measure patience and willpower, allowing only those who resist its pull to leave unharmed. Bloodwood pine endures, its red bark dark against the fading California sky. Rope marks remain, deep and permanent, a record of time and events unknown. Screams rise with the sunset, carried on the wind across the ridge. Travelers who linger too long report dizziness and nausea, as though the tree drains their energy, leaving them hollow. Birds avoid it. Animals steer clear. The forest bends around it. And even the wind hesitates. As though the tree drains their energy, leaving them hollow. Those who pass it quickly feel only its shadowy presence. Those who linger experience its full power. Few linger. Fewer leave unchanged. The ridge is quiet once more. The sun sinks, and bloodwood pine waits, patient and alive. Standing as it has for decades, in the heart of its forgotten grove. Ghost maple stands alone on a hill in rural Pennsylvania, a solitary tree with branches that stretch wide, casting long shadows across the slope. Its leaves shimmer in the sun, a soft rustle with every passing breeze. A rope hangs from one of its strongest limbs, frayed from years of exposure, swaying only slightly with the wind. During the day, it seems harmless, a relic of a forgotten pastime, unmoving and silent, blending into the quiet countryside. But the true nature of ghost maple reveals itself after the sun dips behind the horizon. At night, the air shifts. The wind becomes sharper, carrying a whistle that snakes through the branches like a sigh. The rope, still inert in daylight, begins to sway gently. And then a figure appears. It swings slowly, a motion deliberate and steady, never chaotic, as if following an unseen rhythm. And then a figure appears. It swings slowly, a motion deliberate and steady, never chaotic, as if following an unseen rhythm. The figure is indistinct, obscured by shadow, but its presence is undeniable. Eyes that cannot be seen seem to watch visitors as they approach the hill, an unshakable feeling of observation pressing against the skin. Visitors describe a tension in the air, a quiet that presses in from all sides. The ground slopes beneath their feet, uneven from erosion and time, yet each step feels heavier than it should. The wind carries whispers through the branches, not words, but something like memory, a hum that rises and falls with the swinging figure. The longer one remains, the more pronounced the sensation of being watched becomes. It is not simply fear. It is awareness. The tree itself seems to measure attention, waiting for response, observing movement, cataloging presence. The hill amplifies every sound. Leaves scrape together with sharper edges in the wind. Small animals flee into brush, their rustle punctuating the darkness. Every creak in the rope echoes across the slope. And then the swing moves on its own, marking intervals like a heartbeat, as if counting the time that has passed. Each rise and fall is measured. The figure does not swing higher or faster. It does not stop abruptly. It maintains a rhythm as though bound by purpose. Those who venture near the tree at night report fleeting glimpses of the figure from the corner of their eyes. A shadow shifts. A shape forms between branches. The air carries a chill that wraps around the body, a tangible reminder of presence. Some claim to hear soft footfalls circling the tree, steps that align with the swing but vanish when attention turns directly toward them. Others swear the figure's eyes, dark and patient, follow even when the observer closes their own, a sensation impossible to shake. The rope itself tells a story. Frayed and weathered, it sways with the unseen figure. But it responds also to the wind. Sometimes it moves in contradiction to the breeze. Rising against gusts or swinging when the air is still. The movement feels alive, intentional. Observers describe the rope as a conduit between the earthly and the unseen. A tether between the present and what lingers beyond perception. Even the sound of friction. The faint creak as it rubs against the limb. Holds weight and meaning, punctuating the silent rhythm of the night. Ghost maple is not confined to the hilltop. Visitors notice that the feeling of being watched follows them as they retreat. The wind carries the whistle along with them, rising and falling in tempo, a reminder that the tree, the rope, and the figure remain in observation. Some claim the figure moves beyond the hill, vanishing only when no one looks, while others insist it waits, a sentinel for those who might return, ensuring the presence of memory continues. The swing continues through the hours, moving slowly but persistently, marking time in darkness. Leaves quiver as if echoing the motion. Branches bend slightly toward the figure, as though acknowledging it. The air around the tree is heavier than the surrounding fields, dense with expectation, dense with history, dense with the pulse of attention. Every creak, every whisper, every sway forms a rhythm that cannot be ignored. Visitors who linger feel the pull of the hill, the weight of presence that is neither malevolent nor benign. It is patient. It watches. It marks time with the swing, with the rope, with the silent patience of the tree. The sensation of eyes upon them persists long after they leave the immediate area. The wind continues its sigh, the branches continue to dip and quiver, and memory clings to every footprint along the path to the hill. Ghost maple endures in its isolation. The rope never moves during the day. At night, a figure appears, swinging slowly, measured, deliberate. Eyes unseen follow each visitor, and the wind whistles across the branches like a soft, relentless sigh. The hill is quiet but alive with presence. Shadows shift, whispers float through the leaves. And the air itself holds the weight of observation. Every step taken near the tree is recorded in rhythm. Every heartbeat mirrored in the swing. And every visitor carries the echo of ghost maple with them long after they descend the slope. Widowmaker oak rises alone on a ridge in West Virginia, a tree that dominates the surrounding forest. Despite its injuries, half of its branches were shattered in storms long past, splintered timber still clinging to the trunk at impossible angles. Its bark is thick and dark, etched with old grooves that circle the trunk like scars. In those grooves, rope marks remain, worn into the wood by time and weather, telling of uses long forgotten. The air around the tree is different, heavier and colder, even when the forest beyond shimmers with sunlight and warmth. People who approach say the temperature drops noticeably the closer they get, as though the oak exerts its own climate. The branches creak under their own weight, bending with even the slightest breeze. Yet the sound that most unnerves visitors is not the creaking of wood, but the whispers. They drift through the leaves and twist among the broken limbs, carried in a language half heard. The words are fragmentary, sometimes pleading, sometimes commanding. Help me. Leave. Stay. The voice is everywhere at once, soft and close, impossible to locate, as if it emanates from the tree itself. Those who linger feel the whispers brushing against their mind, tugging at thought and memory, coaxing them forward, warning them back. The roots of widowmaker oak twist across the ridge like veins across stone, thick and gnarled, digging into the earth in irregular patterns. The soil near the base is soft and dark, waterlogged in patches, giving the sense that the tree draws from something deeper than rain or surface streams. The forest floor is littered with fallen leaves, rotting wood, and the occasional broken branch, yet no footstep seems to land quietly here. The air carries an almost tangible weight, the silence of the forest pierced only by the wind moving through injured branches and the murmuring voice within the leaves. Approaching the tree requires caution. The rope scars are rough, biting at skin if touched. And the grooves spiral irregularly, hinting at past use that no one dares confirm. People describe an unease that grows with proximity, a prickling along the spine, a tug at the chest. The closer someone walks, the more the whispers seem to multiply, layering over themselves. The phrases change in rhythm and tone, sometimes repeating, sometimes answering one another. The tree seems to anticipate presence, adjusting the volume and cadence of its whispers to match movement, as if testing attention and intention. Some visitors report seeing shapes among the broken limbs, fleeting and indistinct, like shadows caught on the edges of perception. Others hear footfalls where no one stands, small shifts in the undergrowth that vanish before the eyes can focus. The broken branches sway even when the wind is absent, tiny movements that seem deliberate, as though the tree itself nudges in response to the living nearby. The combination of cold, sound, and motion creates a sensation that the forest is holding its breath, waiting, observing. Rope scars suggest a history that is painful yet unspoken. The grooves spiral high, above easy reach, as if someone once climbed to hang objects or perform acts no longer remembered. The tree's hollowed sections appear dark and deep, their interiors invisible even with flashlights or direct gaze. The whispers sometimes emerge more strongly near these hollows, suggesting a connection between interior and air, between scar and sound. The tree does not call out, does not demand, but the voice is insistent, a presence that cannot be ignored. Visitors describe the ridge itself as altered by the oak. The slope tilts slightly toward the tree, the roots pressing the soil upward, shaping subtle paths that converge near the trunk. Rocks along the edge of the ridge seem shifted, as if by unseen hands, aligned in arcs and patterns that hint at an intentional arrangement. Some who attempt to circle the tree feel a compulsion to return to the base, drawn by the whispers, compelled to follow an invisible rhythm. The forest seems secondary to the oak, a stage upon which it asserts dominion. At dusk, the effect intensifies. Shadows lengthen and mingle with the tree's broken limbs. The whispers rise and fall in volume and pitch, carrying farther across the ridge, curling into the forest beyond. Light catches on rough bark, highlighting every groove and scar. Even from 50 feet away, visitors describe a sense of being watched, measured, evaluated. The longer one stands, the colder the air becomes. The whispers form patterns, a cadence that seems purposeful. Some swear they hear their own name, echoed among the phrases, urging attention, testing resolve. No one knows who or what gave the rope its mark. No record explains the tree's dominance or the intensity of presence that lingers in its hollowed sections. The forest around it grows unchecked, yet nothing encroaches directly on the oak. Small plants skirt the roots, shrubs avoid the base, even animals appear wary. Those who approach from outside the ridge feel hesitation, a primal sense that this tree is different, older, and aware. Half of its branches were broken by storms. Yet it stands. Rope scars wrap around its trunk in old grooves. People report the air grows colder the closer they get. Whispers echo through the leaves, "Help me. Leave." The widowmaker oak waits, patient and aware. Listening to the living as they move across its ridge. It has endured, twisted and scarred. Commanding attention from all who come near. And the voices never cease. Forsaken willow bends low over a dried creek in upstate New York, its gnarled branches drooping almost to the ground. The trunk curves in a long, deliberate arc, roots exposed where the earth has eroded over the years. The creek bed lies empty, cracked in places, yet the willow stretches across it like a bridge, creating a natural canopy that sways in the slightest wind. The air carries the faint scent of moss and damp soil, though the ground itself is parched. Visitors feel hands brush against them, though no one is there. As they pass beneath the hanging limbs, the sensation is subtle at first, a gentle pressure along the shoulders or arm. It is fleeting, almost dismissible, until it happens again, persistent, brushing along their sides as if the tree itself reaches outward. The leaves tremble lightly above, though no wind moves them, amplifying the feeling that something unseen traces the movement of those who walk beneath the branches. Shadows seem to move in the corner of the eye. They flicker and shift with the falling light, bending in ways that the body cannot replicate. Some branches catch the sun and cast irregular silhouettes across the ground. Others appear darker than they should, as if absorbing light rather than reflecting it. The shadows move subtly, sometimes appearing closer than reality permits, only to vanish when attention is focused directly on them. A rope hangs from one of the largest limbs, frayed and weathered. The wood that holds it groans faintly with age. Some claim the rope creaks as if someone climbs it at night. The sound is slow, deliberate, a rhythm of weight pressing against the fibers. Those who listen carefully report that it occurs in intervals, never continuous, as though the climber ascends and stops, hesitates, then descends, though no figure is ever seen. The willow's canopy forms a natural tunnel over the creek, the branches interlocking overhead. Sunlight filters through in narrow bands, creating shifting patterns on the ground that resemble movement, a trick of light and shadow that makes the air seem alive. The ground beneath is uneven, roots twisting along the surface, forcing careful steps for anyone passing through. Moss grows along the base of the trunk and in pockets where water might collect during rain, adding texture to the tree's sprawling presence. Visitors note the silence of the space, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves or the distant sound of wind in surrounding trees. Even birds avoid the immediate area beneath the willow, leaving the space feeling enclosed, private, and undisturbed. Footsteps crunch lightly on the dry creek bed, echoing softly in the open space beneath the branches, yet the echo sometimes carries an additional layer, faint and unidentifiable, as if another presence mirrors the movement of those who walk there. The rope's fibers shift slightly during the day, moving without cause. The movement is minimal but perceptible, a sway that occurs despite still air. Those who examine it closely notice the pattern of movement is not random. It starts and stops, accelerates and slows, mimicking the motions of someone climbing yet leaving no impression at the base. The sound, when audible, is dry, faint, almost metallic against the wood. Visitors report that the deeper they move beneath the canopy, the stronger the sensation of being observed becomes. The pressure along the arms and shoulders intensifies, the shadows deepen, and the rope seems to respond with a subtle sway. The air is cooler here, carrying a scent of damp leaves and rich soil. It brushes along the neck and face, a reminder that the willow dominates this space. The roots along the creek bed twist and coil, creating natural barriers and obstacles. Small creatures avoid the area directly beneath the tree, leaving only the leaves and shadows in motion. The branches sway gently even without wind, and the rope swings lightly, adding to the sense that the willow is alive in ways beyond mere plant growth. Nightfall brings a denser presence. The creek bed, dry in daylight, becomes a darker, more silent channel. The rope creaks more distinctly, in longer intervals, yet the source remains unseen. The subtle pressure along the skin increases, and the shadows seem to move closer, lingering in the peripheral vision. Those who stand still report that the sensation of unseen hands brushing them becomes almost tangible, pressing lightly, tracing the arms and back. Forsaken willow does not move aggressively. It does not strike or make sudden noises. It exerts subtle influence, guiding attention to the rope, to the branches, to the shadows. Every element of the arching limbs, the frayed rope, the twisting roots, and the drifting leaves, creates an environment that feels alive yet patient. The space is preserved in its own rhythm, interacting with visitors through sight, touch, and perception rather than direct action. This is the essence of the forsaken willow. Bending low over a dried creek, its branches almost touching the ground. Visitors feel hands brush against them, though no one is there. Shadows seem to move in the corner of the eye. Some claim the rope creaks as if someone climbs it at night. The air smells faintly of ash and earth, carrying the weight of time and memory. The willow waits quietly, patient and eternal. Its branches heavy with history. Its rope swaying for those who come near, inviting observation, and reminding all who pass beneath that some presence lingers even in silence. Deathroot cypress rises from the swamps of Florida, its massive roots sinking deep into the wet, black earth. The soil clings to boots and boots leave impressions that quickly disappear under the murky water. The tree towers above the surrounding marsh, gnarled and twisted, with branches that stretch wide and hang low, casting long shadows over the water. Moss drapes from its limbs, swaying gently in the wind. creating the illusion of movement even when the air is still. The cypress stands alone in a clearing where sunlight barely reaches the water's surface, a sentinel over the swamp that surrounds it. High in its branches, rope marks remain etched into the wood, frayed and worn by decades of wind and rain. The scars suggest that something hung there, long ago, though no witness remains to tell the story. The ropes themselves have disappeared, but the impressions linger, dark against the bark, a permanent reminder of past use. Visitors cannot approach the tree without feeling the weight of history pressing down, a sense that the ground itself remembers every footstep near its base. Water drips from the tree constantly, though the branches appear dry. There is no rain, no recent storm, yet the sound of liquid striking the swamp below is constant. Visitors describe it as irregular, not rhythmic like a natural leak, but sporadic, as though something unseen moves across the limbs. The sound carries across the water, echoing off the roots and surrounding trees, a whisper of moisture that is not fully understood. Hikers report it growing louder when they step closer, subtle at first, then insistent, demanding attention, impossible to ignore. Shadows move on the water below. Some are faint, barely more than ripples, yet others are darker, more substantial, floating across the swamp without touching the surface. They drift toward those who approach, slow and deliberate. There is no reflection of these shapes in the cypress or the surrounding water. They seem disconnected from reality, existing only to track, to observe, to draw attention. Movement follows the shadow, not the person, a slow, patient advance that cannot be avoided if one remains too long near the tree. The swamp itself feels alive. Birds and insects keep their distance, disturbed by an invisible force. The air is heavy with humidity and the scent of decaying vegetation. Every step on the spongy earth beneath the roots seems amplified, each sound traveling further than it should. Hikers often report the sensation of being watched, of eyes tracking from places unseen. There is no animal presence, no movement beyond the water, moss, and the cypress itself, yet the feeling persists. Visitors who linger near the base of the tree sometimes hear other sounds. A soft scraping, the shifting of something in the undergrowth, low whispers carried on the wind. They are not clearly human. They seem to resonate from the swamp itself, from the black water surrounding the cypress, from the roots that sink deep beneath the surface. The effect is disorienting, causing hikers to question whether the swamp is alive or merely reflecting the imagination of the visitor. At night, the water reflects the moonlight, fractured by movement and shadow. The floating shapes appear more vivid in the dim light, moving with intent across the surface. Their motion is subtle at first, gliding along the current, then direct, as though aware of observers. Visitors who attempt to leave quickly find the path obscured by darkness, roots, and water. Even in familiar terrain, the swamp feels disorienting, as if distances have shifted, as though the cypress itself reshapes the land around it to maintain dominance over the clearing. The rope marks in the high branches draw attention, not because of the physical impression. Perhaps memory embedded into the tree. Combined with the shadows on the water. The dripping from the limbs. And the oppressive atmosphere of the swamp. Create a sensation of narrative without words. Every element points to a history that persists. A consciousness anchored to the tree and its immediate environment. Visitors speak of the tree in hushed tones, describing the sensation of weight on their shoulders. A cold presence brushing past, a subtle nudge as they turn away from the shadows. A subtle nudge as they turn away from the shadows. It is never threatening in a direct way, yet the awareness it imparts is undeniable. People often leave feeling that the swamp is far more alive than the sum of its elements. That the cypress and its surroundings are sentient, patient, and vigilant. That the cypress and its surroundings are patient and vigilant. That the swamp is far more alive than the sum of its elements, that the cypress and its surroundings are sentient, patient, and vigilant. People often leave feeling that the swamp is far more alive than the sum of its elements, that the cypress and its surroundings are sentient, patient, and vigilant. That the cypress and its surroundings are sentient, patient, and vigilant. The swamp is far more alive than the sum of its elements. People often leave feeling that the swamp is far more alive than the sum of its elements, that the cypress and its surroundings are sentient, patient, and vigilant. It is never threatening in a direct way, yet the awareness it imparts is undeniable. Visitors speak of the tree in hushed tones, describing the sensation of weight on their shoulders, a cold presence brushing past, a subtle nudge as they turn away from the shadows. The deathroot cypress dominates the swamp in silence, its roots sunk deep, branches reaching wide. Rope marks remain high above, the ghost of weight and presence still felt. Water drips from dry limbs. Shadows float toward visitors across the blackened swamp, deliberate, patient, inescapable. The forest around it seems darker, colder, and alive, pressing down on those who approach. Every movement, every sound, every step is observed. Those who come to the tree leave changed, carrying the memory of its gaze, the pressure of unseen hands, the whisper of water, and the slow approach of shadows on the surface. The cypress waits, rooted in swamp and history, a sentinel over the dark waters, always watching, always present, always unmoving, yet alive. Hollow elm stands alone in a dark grove near the edge of a Michigan forest, the largest and oldest tree in the clearing. Its trunk is thick and gnarled, branches sprawling wide, casting shadows that stretch long across the forest floor even in daylight. The grove around it is dense, trees pressing close as though protecting the elm from the rest of the world. The path that leads to it is narrow, covered in roots and fallen leaves, forcing travelers to move slowly and watch their step. Rope scars wrap around the trunk, deep and darkened with age. The marks twist and spiral, evidence of events long past but never forgotten. Visitors who pause to study them often feel a weight pressing downward, a pressure that makes the air feel thick. The forest seems to tighten around the clearing, holding its breath. Heavy breathing begins before it is understood. It starts faint, almost drowned out by wind in the trees. Then it grows louder. Deep and uneven, like lungs struggling or a body straining for air. The sound moves through the grove, echoing between trunks, surrounding travelers. Some hear it behind them. Others feel it above, as if the tree itself exhales in deliberate bursts. The rhythm is irregular, never steady, sometimes fast, sometimes dragging, but always close enough to make a person pause and listen. Figures appear from the shadows. They are indistinct at first, glimpsed in the corner of the eye. Dark shapes moving between trees, stepping along the underbrush. They vanish when approached, dissolving into the forest as though they were never there. Some take shape briefly, human in form but impossible in detail. Limbs that bend wrong. Faces that blur. They stand, watch, then step back into shadow. Those who encounter them feel watched long after the figures have disappeared. A presence that lingers in the peripheral vision. The grove itself seems to respond to movement. Leaves shift though no wind blows. Branches groan and bend as if leaning toward the visitors. Shadows stretch unnaturally, sometimes separating from the trunks that cast them. Roots rise slightly above the soil, guiding or hindering steps. Every footfall feels amplified, echoing off unseen walls. The forest is alive in its own way, a living entity aware of those who enter. Travelers report dizziness when lingering near the elm. Heads spin, vision narrows, and the forest appears to tilt. The rope scars seem to pulse faintly, the bark darkening as if responding to the presence of another living being. The air grows heavier with every breath, every heartbeat, until movement becomes a necessity, retreating before the forest claims attention entirely. At dusk, the grove becomes harder to navigate. Shadows deepen, blending into one another. The heavy breathing grows louder, closer, as if something approaches from the darkened trunks. Figures step from shadow to shadow, silent, cautious. Some linger at the edge of vision, moving along the tree's circumference. Others circle the clearing, their motion deliberate, like dancers performing a ritual no one can understand. Visitors are drawn to look, to step closer. But the moment they do, the figures vanish, leaving only the sound of uneven breathing behind. The forest floor is littered with leaves and fallen bark, but footprints appear where no human has walked. Soft impressions, fading quickly, as if pressed by weight that does not belong to this world. Animals avoid the area entirely. Even the birds do not perch in the branches of hollow elm. Even the wind seems to bypass the grove, leaving it still and quiet. Except for the faint, omnipresent sound of respiration. Local residents speak of hollow elm in hushed tones. They warn travelers not to linger past sundown. They say the tree collects energy, feeding off those who stay too long. Rope marks are considered a warning, an echo of what once happened there. Some believe the figures are spirits tied to the tree, bound by events long past but unable to leave. Others claim the heavy breathing is a warning or a lure, guiding visitors toward movement, encouraging retreat before the grove takes more than their time. Few who enter the grove spend long at the base of the tree. Those who linger often feel a pull toward the shadows. An impulse to follow what cannot be caught. Some leave disoriented, feeling their energy drained. Others stumble back to the path, pale and shaken, hearts racing. Many vow never to return. A few are drawn back despite warning. Compelled by a fascination they cannot explain. Hollow elm remains, standing in the center of the dark grove. Rope scars mark its history. Heavy breathing fills the air. Shadowy figures step from the trees and vanish when approached. Travelers who linger too long feel their energy drained, dizzy and weak, drawn into the presence of the tree and the forest that surrounds it. The path is narrow. The forest waits. The oldest elm watches silently from the center of its clearing. And those who step close know they are not alone. Hanging chestnut rises alone in a clearing deep in the Ohio woods. Its branches stretch outward, thick and gnarled, shading the ground in twisted patterns that shift with the wind. A rope hangs from one of the strongest limbs, frayed with age and weathered by decades of exposure. By day, it sways slightly in the breeze, a reminder of past use, of lives that intersected briefly with the tree. But it is the nights that carry the true presence of the tree. On cold evenings, the forest around the clearing grows still. The usual rustle of leaves and movement of nocturnal creatures fades as though the woods themselves hold their breath. Whispers travel through the branches, faint at first, carried by the wind that threads through the trunks. Names are repeated, soft but clear enough to make a visitor pause. They are the names of those who walked the path before, remembered by the clearing, spoken in a voice that is not quite human yet not entirely absent. The whispers twist through the air like smoke, curling around trees, drifting down the path toward anyone who ventures too close. The clearing itself feels alive in subtle ways. Shadows stretch long across the forest floor. The grass bends, not with wind, but as though something unseen passes through. Some visitors swear they see movement along the base of the tree. Pale shapes shifting between roots and fallen leaves. A few have reported seeing hands, ghostly and translucent, brushing along the trunk. Leaving no marks but pressing against memory. The hands never linger long. As if testing or observing, a presence felt more than seen. A presence felt more than seen. The rope itself carries a history. It swings in rhythm with no wind. Its motion seems deliberate, reacting to footsteps along the forest path. People who linger too long feel a subtle pull toward the limb, as though the rope calls to the body, asking for participation, observation, or acknowledgement. The forest is quiet beyond the clearing, but the air feels weighted. Every step toward the tree is measured against unseen attention. Leaves crunch underfoot, but the sound seems magnified, carried through the air in patterns that suggest listening. Shadows shift to meet the sound. Names are whispered again, curling through branches, following the visitor as they move. It is not threatening, but insistent. The forest holds memory, and the tree carries it in ways that are tangible and persistent. At the base of Hanging Chestnut, the ground is uneven and scattered with leaves and debris from seasons past. Roots curl outward, forming natural obstacles and small shelters beneath the tree. Those who pause here report a sensation of being observed, of something pressing gently at the edge of perception. The whispers intensify when attention is paid to the ground, as though every step taken along the roots and fallen leaves is being noted. Some describe the feeling of a presence brushing past them, moving lightly along their shoulder or hand without contact, leaving only the awareness of proximity. The clearing changes as the moon rises higher. Shadows deepen, stretching toward the edges of the forest. The rope swings slowly in the rising wind, or perhaps in response to unseen motion. Whispers echo with greater clarity, layering names in succession, almost forming phrases but never fully coherent. The hands along the trunk appear more distinctly to those who dare to watch, delicate and pale, brushing against the bark and then disappearing into the night. The branches sway gently, creating soft rustling that blends with the whispers and intensifies the impression of life where none should exist. Paths leading to the clearing are narrow and overgrown. Grass and brambles form natural barriers, guiding travelers in subtle ways. The rope, the tree, and the clearing seem to mark an invisible boundary, pulling attention and movement toward the center. Visitors who enter the clearing report that the air grows heavier, more attentive. Each breath feels deeper, each step measured. The whispers rise and fall with the pulse of attention, as though the forest itself participates in the memory that clings to the tree. Those who linger too long report that the clearing records presence. Movements are noted. Footsteps echo differently than expected. Shadows shift in patterns that suggest observation. Names are repeated with subtle variation, like the forest is practicing speech, learning the shape and weight of each visitor. The rope swings more distinctly, responding to presence. The hands appear briefly and retreat. The feeling of unseen eyes upon the visitor strengthens, persistent but not hostile. It is a rhythm of memory, a pulse of attention embedded in the tree and the surrounding woods. Hanging Chestnut endures as a focal point of past and present. The rope never moves during the day. On cold nights, whispers echo through the forest, repeating the names of those who walked the path before. Shadows stretch among the hanging branches. Pale hands brush along the trunk, leaving no mark but imprinting presence. Visitors leave with the memory of observation, the subtle pulse of attention, and the sensation that the clearing itself has recorded their steps. The forest waits, patient and quiet, holding each visitor in the rhythm of the tree, the rope, and the whispering air. Silent juniper rises from the desert floor in Arizona, surrounded by rocks and shifting sand. Its roots grip the parched earth like fingers clinging to memory, and the twisted branches reach outward as if seeking something beyond the horizon. Sunlight beats down relentlessly, casting long shadows that shift with every subtle movement of the wind. The tree is alone, but the emptiness around it does not feel empty. Visitors often describe a sensation of being observed, a quiet awareness that seems to stretch in every direction. Above, rope stains mark the trunk. Faded grooves curve around the bark, remnants of hands that gripped tightly long ago. The wood has grown around them, twisting the impressions into the tree itself, a permanent record of an event that no one remembers clearly. The rope is gone, yet the scars remain, darkened by sun and sand, and they seem to pulse faintly when approached. Many say standing beneath the marks is like standing beneath expectation. The tree watches, and something else listens. Shadows appear in the branches. They are subtle at first, slight movements among the needles and twigs, but the longer one stares, the more defined they become. Figures leaning, crouching, shifting slightly with intent. They are never fully formed, never solid, yet they suggest presence. A person steps left, the shadows lean right. A voice would be expected, but none comes. The desert around the tree is silent, yet the branches whisper with implied sound. At night, the tree changes. The heat of the day leaves, replaced by cool air that carries a strange clarity. Chains can be heard rattling from the branches even when the wind is absent. Some say it is old metal caught in the tree from decades past. Others insist it is not metal at all, that the sound is too deliberate, too rhythmic to be caused by chance. The rattling varies in pace and intensity, like footsteps along the limbs. Those who hear it describe a tension in the air, a sense that something moves closer while remaining unseen. The ground beneath silent juniper is uneven and littered with rocks. Each step produces a soft crunch that echoes faintly across the desert floor. Travelers report feeling the gaze of the tree even as they approach cautiously. Shadows shift at the corners of vision. Rope scars seem darker in contrast to the pale bark. Even the smallest movement of sand carries weight, like the desert itself is conscious, attentive to the rhythm of approach. Visitors often feel compelled to circle the tree. Each rotation reveals subtle differences. A branch twists slightly more than before. The rope grooves seem to deepen, or at least appear so in the shifting light. There is a suggestion of measurement, of attention to presence. Some stop at the outer perimeter, feeling observed but safe. Others approach the trunk and feel the pull of something unseen, a subtle gravity that draws them closer, coaxing without force. The desert intensifies the experience. The horizon stretches endlessly, offering no landmarks beyond the tree itself. Heat waves distort perception during the day, making the shadows of rocks and cacti blur and shift. At night, the stillness is profound. The rattling chains, the whisper of shifting sand, the soft pulse of rope scars on barca, they combine to create a sense of consciousness rooted in the tree. Silent juniper is older than memory. Its branches have endured storms, drought, and heat beyond measure. Each season leaves tracisa sun-bleached bark, scars from lightning, twisted limbsa, but the essence of the tree remains unchanged. The presence is patient, enduring, waiting for acknowledgement without demanding it. Some explorers attempt to touch the rope scars, to trace the grooves with fingers. Those who do report a subtle vibration, a pulse that resonates through the hand and arm, reaching the chest. The movement is faint but unmistakable, like the heartbeat of the tree itself. The shadows in the branches shift in response. The rattling chains increase in rhythm, then pause, as if awaiting the next gesture. The tree interacts without movement, without speech, through perception alone. Silent juniper does not allow intrusion lightly. It tolerates observation but responds to approach. The rope scars, the swinging shadows, the rattling chainsaw, they exist as reminders. The tree occupies the desert not only physically but mentally, exerting influence through perception and sound. Visitors often leave with an impression rather than a story, unable to fully articulate what they experienced. The desert seems quieter after departure, yet the tree remains, unchanged and attentive. Rocks and sand surround the tree. Rope stains remain above. People feel watched from every direction. Shadows appear in the branches like figures leaning close. Some hear chains rattling on windless nights. The silent juniper waits, patient, aware, enduring across the desert. Observing all who dare to approach. Dark oak stands near a long-forgotten trail in Missouri. Its massive trunk twisted and gnarled with age. The bark is dark, almost black in places. And the roots coil across the forest floor, gripping the earth like fingers holding secrets. The canopy stretches wide, casting shadows that ripple across the undergrowth even when the sun is high. Fallen leaves and moss carpet the ground, muffling footsteps and creating an impression that the forest itself is hushed around the tree. A rope hangs from one of the thickest limbs. It is frayed in places but remarkably strong, swinging lightly even when there is no wind. The fibers creak occasionally, a faint sound that carries through the forest. Locals say the rope never rests. It moves as though memory itself keeps it in motion, a reminder of events long past. Travelers who approach the tree often pause, drawn by the slight sway, feeling a pull they cannot name. Locals say the air thickens around it. The moment someone nears dark oak, the atmosphere changes. Breathing becomes heavier, almost deliberate. The scent of earth and damp leaves deepens, mingling with something faintly metallic, like old iron. The forest seems denser here. Even the light shifts, shadows deepening unnaturally beneath the branches. Those who linger feel an oppressive weight, subtle yet persistent, pressing against their shoulders and chest. Visitors hear faint footsteps behind them, echoing the swing of the rope. The sound is soft at first, distant, then closer, matching their movement as they walk around the tree. The echo does not originate from their own steps. It comes from somewhere behind, tracing their path in a slow, measured rhythm. Turn quickly, and nothing is there. The forest remains empty, still, silent except for the swaying rope. The rope seems to respond to the presence of those who approach. Its movement quickens slightly when someone pauses beneath the limb. It swings wider, creaking in patterns that mimic the rhythm of the footsteps heard just beyond the visitor's back. Leaning close to examine it reveals nothing unusual. The fibers are worn, coarse, yet the motion seems deliberate, alive. The ground around dark oak is uneven. Roots rise and twist along the surface, creating natural obstacles for anyone moving near the trunk. The forest seems aware of movement, shifting subtly with the presence of observers. Light filters through the canopy in thin streaks, illuminating the trunk and rope in ways that accentuate every texture, every groove in the bark. Sometimes the sound is not from anyone walking. The forest seems aware of movement, shifting subtly with the presence of observers. A sense of impending doom and madness. The shadow beneath the tree feels almost tangible. It stretches beyond the base of the trunk, extending across the moss and roots. Even in daylight, the shadow seems to move subtly, lengthening or shifting as visitors step closer. The faint sound of creaking echoes softly, reinforcing the sense of presence, though no figure is ever seen. Dark oak commands attention without movement. There is no sudden motion, no abrupt sound. Yet every element of the rope, the shadows, the shifting air works together to create a sense of life, of awareness. The forest around the tree falls quiet. Birds avoid perching on the low branches. Small animals skirt the area, leaving the undergrowth empty. Even the wind seems hesitant, bending lightly around the trunk without disturbing the rope. Visitors who remain too long report a sense of being watched. The echoing footsteps continue, matching their own pace. The swing of the rope intensifies slightly, drawing attention upward to the thick limb and the dark fibers that hang from it. The branches sway subtly, though no wind passes through. The air is heavier here than anywhere else along the trail, pressing down like a presence that measures each breath. The tree itself seems to breathe in response. Leaves flutter faintly, roots shift imperceptibly, and the rope swings in wider arcs. The sound of footsteps behind blends with the ambient creak, creating a rhythm that cannot be ignored. The effect is subtle, psychological at first, then physical, as if the forest encourages awareness of what lingers unseen. Even the smallest details are amplified beneath dark oak. A leaf falling across the moss sounds like a footstep. The sway of a thin branch mimics a gesture. The rope's fibers catch the light differently with every movement, creating patterns that seem purposeful. Shadows appear to stretch toward the rope, though no shape exists there. Dark oak does not reveal its secrets easily. It does not force anyone to act, yet it guides attention to the rope, the trunk, and the area immediately beneath the canopy. Each element of the echoing footsteps, the creaking rope, the subtle movement of air and shadows creates a layered experience, drawing the observer into the space, while maintaining the sense that something is watching and waiting. A tree near a long-forgotten trail. Rope is frayed but strong. Locals say the air thickens around it. Visitors hear faint footsteps behind them, echoing the swing of the rope. The branches bend low over the ground, shadows twist unnaturally. And the forest falls silent except for the whisper of motion. The branches bend low over the ground, shadows twist unnaturally, and the forest falls silent except for the whisper of motion. Dark oak waits patiently, rooted in memory and presence, a sentinel on the trail, a silent witness to every visitor who dares to step near and listen to the echo of what lingers unseen. Nightfall pine stands alone in the Nevada desert, a solitary sentinel rising from rocky soil and sparse scrub. Its trunk is thick and darkened by decades of sun and wind, scarred by lightning strikes that split the bark and blackened its limbs. Needles cling stubbornly to its branches, twisting and curling in uneven patterns that give the tree a weathered, almost skeletal appearance. Even in daylight, shadows cast by the limbs seem longer than they should be, stretching across the ground in distorted shapes that sway with the slightest breeze. The wind carries a constant whisper through the needles, a faint, rustling sound that rises and falls in rhythm with the branches. There is a cadence to it, a quality that draws attention and slows the steps of anyone walking beneath the tree. Travelers describe the sound as almost human, a sighing, murmured presence that seems to originate from above, lingering in the branches themselves. A rope remains dangling from one of the higher limbs. It is frayed and weathered, blackened at several points as if it has endured years of exposure to the sun and storm. The rope sways gently in calm air, as though it is responding to a weight that is not visible. At times it twists and swings more violently when someone approaches, jerking as though something unseen pulls it from above. The movement is deliberate, sudden, and enough to startle even those prepared for the tree's presence. Travelers often report hearing soft crying from above. The sound is faint at first, a quiet whimper carried on the desert wind. They are not urgent. They are not frightened. They are patient, steady, a persistent sound that draws the attention of anyone nearby. The longer one stands beneath the tree, the louder the crying seems to grow, as if amplified by the needles and branches. Eyes appear in the branches that resemble human eyes. They are fleeting, never holding a gaze long enough to be certain. Some say the eyes move independently of the branches, tracking motion, watching intently. Others claim that looking directly at them causes the eyes to vanish, reappearing moments later when the observer turns away. The effect is disorienting, creating a sense that the tree itself is aware of each movement beneath it. The ground beneath the nightfall pine is littered with fallen needles, small rocks, and sand swept into ripples by the wind. Footsteps seem amplified here, echoing unnaturally across the rocky soil. The air feels heavier, colder, though the desert sun may still shine. Travelers speak of a subtle pressure on their shoulders, a sensation of being measured and observed without a visible presence. The rope swings, the branches shift, and the eyes glimmer, all working in concert to create a heightened awareness of the tree's dominance over its surroundings. At night, the effect becomes even more pronounced. Moonlight filters through the needles, casting the ground and the limbs in sharp, moving shadows. The rope appears darker, heavier, and swings more violently in the absence of sunlight. The crying becomes clearer, more distinct, like a human voice crying softly from the canopy. The shadows of the branches stretch unnaturally, creating shapes that seem to move of their own accord. Those who venture beneath the tree at night feel an intensified sense of watchfulness, as though the pine itself is alert, following each step, each turn of the head, each pause. The desert around the tree is quiet. No other trees grow near enough to distract from the presence of nightfall pine. The rocks and sand seem still, holding no sound except the whisper of the needles. Insects and birds keep their distance. Even the wind feels hesitant when it passes through the clearing, carrying the soft crying in irregular bursts that mimic the breathing of someone waiting. The clearing itself seems smaller at night, walls of shadow pressing in from all directions. Some travelers have attempted to document the tree with cameras or recording devices. The results are inconsistent. Photographs sometimes capture the rope in mid-swing when there is no wind. Shadows appear in images that do not correspond to any visible branches. Faint glimmers resembling eyes sometimes appear on high limbs, though they are never captured consistently. Audio recordings occasionally pick up crying or rustling not audible to the human ear at the time, a subtle distortion that defies explanation. Visitors rarely linger long beneath the tree. The combination of rope, crying, eyes, and shadows creates an unrelenting sense of awareness. Even brief exposure leaves an impression that persists long after leaving the clearing. Some hikers return months later, reporting that the image of the tree remains in their mind. The image of the tree, the swinging rope, the soft crying, and the feeling of being watched, vivid and unshakable. The nightfall pine dominates the landscape, a living presence anchored in rock and sand, observing without end. The tree is not merely an object. It is a sentinel. Its needles whisper in the wind. The rope swings without contact. Eyes glimmer in the canopy. Soft cries echo from above. The desert grows colder and darker around it. Alive with the presence of the tree. Those who approach feel hands brushing their shoulders. Subtle pressure that reminds them of unseen observers. Every movement beneath the pine is known. Every pause measured. Every glance recorded. Nightfall pine remains, alone and vigilant. The desert around it holds its silence. Shadows stretch across the clearing. Eyes glimmer high in the limbs. The crying continues. Travelers leave. Carrying the memory of the tree, its watchful gaze. And the unshakable awareness that beneath its canopy, they were never truly alone. Forsaken elm stands in a clearing near an abandoned farmhouse in rural Illinois. The tree is tall and gnarled, its branches spreading wide as if to claim the surrounding land. Bark is dark and weathered, scarred by deep rope marks that spiral around the trunk, grooves blackened by age and shadow. The farmhouse sits a short distance away, its windows broken, siding rotted, a roof sagging under years of neglect. The clearing between the two is overgrown with weeds, grass bending under its own weight, yet the area around the tree remains eerily clear, as though something prevents nature from fully reclaiming it. At night, fog rolls in from the surrounding fields. It moves silently, thick and low, swallowing the ground and creeping along the edges of the farmhouse. Visibility drops to a few feet, yet the tree is always visible, looming in the gray mist like a sentinel. Shadows gather along the branches, stretching unnaturally, swinging slightly as if caught in a slow, invisible current. Screams can be heard in bursts. They rise suddenly from the fog, high-pitched and panicked. Then fade into silence. The sound carries across the empty fields, echoing off distant trees, and returning to the clearing in distorted waves. Some claim the screams are human, though there is no one to be seen. Others describe them as something else entirely, sharper, unnatural, carrying a resonance that vibrates in the chest rather than the ears. The forest and fields amplify the sound, giving the impression of movement in every direction at once, surrounding anyone who dares approach. The rope scars on the elm are impossible to ignore. Deep grooves carve through the bark, their edges hardened and blackened. Some wrap high around the trunk, impossible for an adult to reach without equipment. Others form loops near the base, curling back on themselves. Visitors describe an odd sensation when touching them, a chill that spreads through the fingertips and up the arm. The air around the tree feels thicker, heavier, as though holding the memory of each mark and the events that created it. Travelers who linger report dizziness and nausea. The fog seems to press in, seeping through clothing and skin, suffusing the lungs with a cold, damp weight. Eyes struggle to adjust as the fog thickens, shadows stretching and twisting in impossible ways. The clearing seems larger than it should be, the farmhouse farther, yet closer, than memory allows. Shapes appear at the edges of vision, fleeting, dark, humanoid, stepping between branches or among the weeds. When looked at directly, they vanish, leaving only the impression that they were never entirely absent. The farmhouse itself seems connected to the tree. Doors hang open on rusted hinges, boards creaking in the slightest breeze. Windows are broken, glass missing, yet the interior is never completely dark. Faint glimmers of light appear at random, sometimes reflecting off the tree, sometimes moving across the floorboards. Some visitors have reported hearing the soft scrape of wood inside, footsteps pacing the floors, though no one is present. Others claim a door slams suddenly, the sound carrying far across the clearing, followed by silence that feels deliberate. Air currents shift unpredictably near the elm. Sometimes a sudden gust chills the skin, carrying the scent of damp soil, mildew, and something metallic faintly reminiscent of blood. Leaves rustle though the night is still. Branches sway even when the wind does not reach them. The fog moves differently around the tree, slowing or pooling at the base, creating a sense that the tree itself controls the environment. Some who approach the not by birds or animals, but by something larger. Unseen, observing their movements from the fog or the shadows of the branches. It is an interaction subtle and unnerving, giving the impression of life without form. Few linger long enough to notice the full effect. Those who do describe a heavy weight pressing into their chest and shoulders. Like the memory of the tree itself inhabiting the body. The rope marks appear to throb with their heartbeat, echoing past events into the present. The screams intensify as the fog deepens. And some report that the wind carries the sound in patterns, surrounding them with echoes that make it impossible to determine direction. Forsaken elm remains, rooted in the clearing, its rope scars a permanent testament to events long past. Fog rolls through the fields each night, and shadows hang from the branches, waiting and moving. Screams echo across the empty farmland, bursts of sound that warn, repel, and beckon simultaneously. Travelers who approach feel dizziness, nausea, a cold weight in the air, and the sense that they are observed by more than mere branches and leaves. The farmhouse decays quietly nearby, its connection to the tree undeniable but unexplained. Doors open and close with no wind, footsteps echo without source, and shadows appear and vanish in ways that defy explanation. Forsaken elm stands as it has for decades, guarding its clearing, holding its history in bark, fog, and shadow. And anyone who steps too close knows that some presence watches silently, patient and enduring, beneath the twisting branches of the ancient tree. Deathball willow stands across a quiet Texas road, its trunk wide and darkened by years of weather and exposure. Its branches stretch outward like skeletal arms, reaching toward the asphalt below, shading the road in jagged patterns. The leaves twist in the wind, creating a rustle that feels more like whispering than the sound of movement. A rope hangs from one of the lowest limbs, frayed and thick, dangling at a height where it can be touched by anyone passing beneath. It sways slightly, but only when someone approaches. Visitors describe the air around the willow as heavy, almost viscous, as if each breath carries weight beyond the ordinary. The wind seems to slow as it passes through the branches, amplifying the rustling and creaking of wood. Light filters through the canopy unevenly, casting sharp shadows that stretch across the road. The patterns twist and bend in ways that make the path ahead seem distorted, unstable, untrustworthy. Some who approach report an immediate sense of unease, a pull toward retreat before reaching the tree itself. The rope is central to the experience. It moves subtly when observed, swaying gently without wind. Some claim that looking at it directly produces the impression that it is tightening, shortening imperceptibly, as if responding to attention. The sensation is not always visual. A tension in the chest, a tightening in the throat, an instinctive awareness that one should step back. Those who glance away briefly often notice it resumes a relaxed position, only to return to tension when looked at again. The rope behaves as though aware, a presence rather than a passive object. Physical symptoms accompany the mental response. Visitors report dizziness, a spinning in the head that intensifies near the base of the tree. Nausea follows, subtle at first, then persistent, urging retreat. The air carries a faint metallic scent, sharp and elusive. And the sound of rustling leaves creates a rhythm that some describe as disorienting, like a heartbeat out of time. The road seems longer than it should, bending in imperceptible ways as one approaches the tree. Shadows twist ahead of steps, creating a sense of being pursued or observed, even in the absence of other people. The branches themselves interact with light and sound in unusual ways. On windy afternoons, they creak and groan, producing low tones that carry down the road. The sound resonates in the chest and ears of those standing beneath the canopy. Shadows from the leaves bend and stretch unnaturally across the ground. Even in still air, the branches seem to lean forward slightly, reaching closer to the rope and the road, creating an environment that is simultaneously static and moving. Some visitors report seeing subtle changes in perspective. A branch that seemed distant may appear closer when one looks away and then back. The rope may seem to hang at a different angle, and the shadows shift in ways that contradict the position of the sun. The entire scene feels responsive, as if the tree, the rope, and the surrounding space are aware of presence and observation, adapting to focus and attention. Light and shadow, movement and stillness, all converge to create an environment that is tangible yet intangible at the same time. The sensation is strongest at twilight. The fading light enhances the twisting shadows and the shape of the branches. The rope glows faintly in the last rays of sun, standing out against the dark trunk. Whispers seem to rise with the wind, faint voices that are carried through the rustling leaves. Names, half-formed phrases, or tones resembling speech, drift through the branches. Listeners feel the sound pressing against their perception, urging awareness without direct communication. Some hear their own names. Others hear names they do not recognize. The whispers create a sense of proximity to the unseen, intensifying the pull to leave. Those who remain beneath the tree experience a compounding sense of unease. The dizziness intensifies. Nausea grows stronger. Shadows move at the edge of vision. The rope seems closer than it did at first. There is a suggestion of pressure, a weight pressing subtly on the shoulders and chest. Some who venture near attempt to move past the tree and find the path ahead twisting slightly, as if the road itself curves unnaturally, creating the impression of obstacles where none exist. The effect is subtle but persistent, reinforcing the instinct to retreat. At night, Deathball Willow takes on its most distinct presence. The rope sways slowly, guided by an unseen hand or force. Wind whistles through the branches in long sighs, punctuated by occasional creaks that echo across the road. Those brave enough to linger report phantom movements along the edges of vision, shapes brushing branches, shadows shifting closer, pale forms that vanish when attention is turned directly toward them. The tree itself feels alive, not in the sense of sentience, but in awareness, a sentinel marking those who cross its path. Deathball willow endures as a site of both physical and perceptual tension. Branches stretch across the road like claws. The rope hangs low, responding subtly to observation. Visitors feel dizziness, nausea, and a compulsion to leave. Shadows twist and shift. The wind whistles through the branches like a sigh. The tree marks presence, responds to attention, and creates a space where the ordinary world bends, reminding anyone who crosses the road that not all trees are passive, and not all roads are safe to travel. The final tree that waits stands deep in a forest that is rarely traversed. Where the canopy closes so tightly that light rarely touches the forest floor. Its location shifts in memory, known only to those who have wandered too far into the trees. Past landmarks that once seemed familiar. Travelers speak of moving through endless trunks. Thick underbrush. And the constant hum of unseen insects. Until the air changes. The shadows deepen. And then, in the center of the clearing, the tree appears. Its trunk is massive, warped and twisted, scarred by age and storms that have long passed. Rope hangs from a branch high above, weathered and frayed, yet untouched by wind or decay. The rope swings gently, a pendulum without force, moving as though guided by something unseen. Beneath it, shadows gather. Dark shapes linger between the roots, curling into hollows and extending along the forest floor. They do not move when observed, but when the eye is elsewhere, they stretch, shift, and pulse with subtle life. The forest is quiet around the tree. The usual sounds of wind and birds fade as if muted by some invisible presence. Even the forest floor seems to respond, the moss and fallen leaves undisturbed, yet somehow alert. Visitors report the feeling of being watched from every angle. Every step is measured by an unseen observer, and each breath feels louder than it should, amplified in the stillness. Whispers rise through the leaves. They begin softly, almost like the rustle of the wind through needles and branches. But soon the words become clear. Names, long forgotten or recently lost, repeat in the hush of the forest. The voices do not call directly, but echo as if the tree itself speaks. It remembers each person who strayed too far. Those who hear the whispers cannot tell if they are intended as warning, as greeting, or as something else entirely. The rope above moves differently when someone approaches. The motion seems purposeful, measuring intent, reading hesitation, testing courage. A visitor who steps too close feels a subtle pull in the chest, a magnetic tension drawing them forward. The closer they move, the more the shadows lean from the forest floor and the whispering grows louder. The names of the lost layer over one another, forming a chorus of those who never returned. Some who arrive at the tree describe a rising wind, carrying the faintest sound of screaming. Not one voice, but many. The cries twist through the canopy, climbing from branches and disappearing into the distance. They are not angry, nor are they in pain, but they are insistent, calling for attention, calling for witnesses. It is an auditory sensation that cannot be ignored. Attempts to step around the tree are futile. The clearing seems to shift, reshaping itself subtly to guide movement toward the trunk and rope. Roots appear where none existed, tripping the unwary. Shadows lengthen to block escape paths. The air grows thick, each breath more difficult than the last, as if the forest itself resists retreat. Those who approach too closely vanish. They are not dragged, not heard falling. One moment they step toward the tree, the next they are gone. The rope still swings. The shadows linger. The whispers rise. The forest returns to its quiet state. But the presence of the tree remains. Eternal and watchful. Some believe the tree waits for a new face, a traveler who wandered beyond caution. Who ignored warning and followed the whispers. Some say it remembers everyone who dared to step too close, keeping their names alive in the hushed chorus that drifts through leaves and branches. Each new visitor adds to the memory, becomes part of the forest's history, even if they are never seen again. The clearing feels alive with anticipation. Shadows curl, rope sways, and whispers grow more distinct. Names resonate in the mind of anyone near, even if they do not recognize them. The tree stands tall, ancient and patient. Its bark is scarred with time, its branches twisted, its roots firmly anchored, yet the presence it holds is far greater than its physical form. To approach the tree is to feel the weight of every visitor who has come before. It is a threshold, a point where the forest decides who may pass and who will be claimed. Silence follows the vanished. Those who escape speak only of the rope, the shadows, and the chorus of names. They never forget the pull, the whispers, or the feeling of being measured. This tree does not age in the usual sense. Storms break branches, yet it endures. The rope remains above, swaying as if alive. Shadows gather below, waiting. Whispers rise endlessly, calling out names, repeating over and over. The wind carries distant screaming. The final tree that waits appears only to those who wander too far. Rope hangs high. Shadows gather below. Whispers rise through the leaves, repeating the names of the lost. The rope sways. The wind carries screaming. Those who approach are never seen again. Some say the tree waits for a new face. Some say it remembers everyone who dared step too close. Thank you, my friend, for wandering through these haunted forests tonight. Trees can witness life, shade travelers, shelter birds, and carry memories. But some trees carry more than memory. They hold sorrow. They hold anger. They hold the souls of those who could not escape. If you ever see a twisted tree with rope marks dangling from a branch, feel the chill of the air around it, hear whispers in the leaves. Do not approach. Do not linger. Do not answer. Tell me before we part tonight. Would you dare step closer to a tree that remembers death? Or would you leave the forest before it calls your name? Rest now. Until our next haunted journey.